Hey there, and welcome to Approved AF, the licensing podcast. Stories and strategies from mortgage professionals who got licensed and leveled up. I'm Catalina Stepanoff, and I work behind the scenes at licensingstore.com, where we help mortgage companies get licensed, stay compliant, and scale without the chaos. So, if you're thinking about launching your own shop, leveling up your business, or just want to learn from people who've already walked the walk, then I'm glad you're here. And let's get into it. Joining me on today's episode is Karah Feeley, the SVP of Licensing at licensingstore.com, where she helps mortgage professionals get and grow their companies through seamless NMLS licensing. She specializes in multi-state projects and advanced change notice filings. With almost a decade of experience navigating the complexities of the mortgage regulations, Karah is known for making the licensing process clear, efficient, and chaos-free. On this episode, Karah will share practical tips and insights to navigating the company NMLS. So, to kick us off, tell us a little bit about you and how you got into this role at Licensing Store and how long you've been in the licensing game.
So I started with my bachelor's in criminal justice. That was my first journey out of high school, and that got me just to out of interest. But I was always been bartending for years. So then COVID hit and kind of changed the restaurant industry to kind of push me to use my degree. So I kind of dove into new job opportunities that weren't necessarily criminal justice, but in the law area, and found a licensing compliance company. And that was back in 2020. It's funny because when I got my bachelor's, I always said I would stay away from corporate law and business. And then here I am in the industry that I thought I'd stay away from. But so when I started in 2020, that I started at the very below of MLO level, and worked my way up to branch and then company, in just a short span of, I think it was under a year, when I learned all three, and then moved to more of a company level basis, meaning changing of the amendments, like you were mentioning, anything of company level changing, and Secretary of State, so kind of changed and switched gears. I'd say around 2021, 2022 is when I met you guys, and left my previous employer to come here and still did the same things, and still do all three levels here. So that's just kind of how I found the industry and started.
Awesome. What would you say is the thing that new growing companies kind of misjudge about their company NMLS records?
So when it comes to records, whether or not who needs to be monitoring it. So we always recommend that, it's not just an average secretary or someone who is on your account. You definitely want someone higher up. We always mostly recommend an owner, because there is just so many changes you make within the company profile. So that is kind of a misconception. I see a lot of our clients get Jane, whoever next to them, start their company profile, and then none of them have the passwords, or none of them have the user accounts, and they're just like, I don't know how to get into my account. So that's the beginning issues of the NMLS. So we always recommend that. And your EIN number, that's super unknown to a lot of new business owners. It's a document you get at the very beginning. You may not think it's important. It just looks like a general IRS document, but it is very, very important. So those are I'd say the top two I see when it comes to the company profiles. And then I'd say last but not least is books and records. A lot of you guys may have an accountant or a company who does your books for your company, which is perfectly fine. But when you switch to the regulatory questions in the NMLS, they're not necessarily asking who maintains it. They're asking, if you were to go through an audit, who would we ask questions to? So we always recommend that be an owner of your company, or someone, again, very close to your company who does know the ins and outs. So it wouldn't necessarily someone who's compiled your financials. It's someone who knows what's going on in the ins and outs of it.
That's a really good point. Yeah, absolutely. What is one thing that you wish every broker did proactively with their company NMLS records?
So I feel like I always like to use the basic examples of like basic life. Like when you move a home, you have to let the post office know if you want your Amazon deliveries to come to you. So that's kind of the example I use with my clients. If you change anything on your own personal account, it's the same thing you want your company to. So a lot of them think, oh, well, I'm not necessarily in the office space yet. I'm looking for a new lease. I don't plan on moving there until 90 days from now. It's very, like the word you use, proactive. Even if it's 90 days from now, the quicker you tell the states you're in or your profile, the quicker it is for you to be fully approved or reviewed before you're in that space. So that's one. And then proactive is your policies. So even if you're just a startup, I always like to use the recommendation of what's called like a corporate kit. Even if you're, an LLC, you should have some basic kit of just your articles of incorporation or organization, just the very basics, an operating agreement or any type of agreements you guys have, just having a basic, filing cabinet or corporate kit, because those will always be needed, doesn't matter what state you're going in. And just being proactive in knowing when they're updated. So you don't want to just do it when you open. You want to keep your legal documents fresh.
Yeah, I think in a different episode, we kind of touched on policies and plans for a startup, including your QC plan, your AML plan, your IT plan. Again, those are just like your starting docs, and then you can always add to them and amend them as you're moving or as you're changing your business activities and things like that.
Yeah, and you always want to freshen it up, like you said, startup, and then 2 years you're no longer a startup, so you want to revisit your documents always.
Good point. And then making sure that you not just update them in the Word doc, but update them to the NMLS.
Yes, you will get asked in your audits, I promise you.
How important is it for people to keep their NMLS records up to date?
It's very important, not just for a compliance reason. It's for legal documentation. So if you have an annual report or any type of report, some states are still in the old ages, meaning they still believe in snail mail. So if you get invoicing from, third-party providers, you still use snail mail. So if you have a bond provider out there, they may still be mailing you your invoices. And if you don't keep your addresses updated, you're not getting your bills. So that's something, as well as if someone left your company and you just have them willy-nilly on your profile still, they still could be required to do criminal background checks and all that good stuff. So you don't want to run into that, as it'll just be more work for you down the end. So any update, even as little as you removing a comma from your name, you just want to update your profile at all times.
That's a really a nitpicky point, but certain states will harp on that punctuation.
Yeah. I have a client who has their LLC, but the C is the only one lowercase on accident, and they still got hit. So it's as simple as just even one letter being incorrect can be a problem.
Wow. Yeah.
So.
Any horror stories of things that you've come across in your years of experience that people didn't keep their NMLS records up to date and it costing them something?
So there are some states that are a little more pickier. I wouldn't say necessarily horror stories, because I like to always tell our clients the states are more forgiving than you think, especially if you have a proper explanation. If it's as simple as I just didn't pay my taxes for years, they may not be as nice as that. So that is the biggest thing. Is the NMLS is a little later than your Secretary of State. So what that means is, if you are late or delinquent on your taxes, you may not see an order on the NMLS for a few months. So that doesn't necessarily mean you're good in the state of Tennessee. I'm just using a random state. So that's a horror story, as well as a lot of our clients don't understand that the Secretary of State is very, very much connected to your license. So they do come hand in hand. So I always say that's the biggest story I see. Or like Texas and the franchise tax report. You can be flying completely okay with your company license on the NMLS and say there's no items on there. What are you talking about? and you have a forfeited status on the Secretary of State. The state regulator knows about it, but it's going to take them a minute to update your NMLS record. So that is something I always see with making sure you're just compliant on all levels and just being as communicative as you can to the state. And that's where they are forgiving. If you hit them up and you let them know right away it was a slip up or whatever the case may be, I've seen it be a simple fix. Even I think the biggest one is California. They will not reverse it. If you do not put a 10-day advance notice on any address change, they will make you pay the $500 regardless. There is no forgiveness there.
Wow.
So even if you were 9 days, let's say like you had your MU1 ready, you fell asleep and you were like, oh no, and you forgot to change your date the next day and you're like, wait, let me submit a new one. That $500 is owed regardless. So there's just some horror stories like that. Change of ownership, long time ago. With advanced change notices as well, you have to keep pushing your advanced change notice out for Virginia, because you have to get an official commissioner approval. It's an actual, again, when I say old ages, like a stamped, beautiful certification you have to get from the commissioner. And if you do not get that, your ownership has to keep getting pushed back. And if you don't, you technically violated a statute of theirs, and they get very serious and throw a lot of legal jargon at you. So just some fun horror stories there. We got out of the weeds. They got out of it, but it was still very scary.
Now, I've seen, and they weren't necessarily a client of ours, but they were coming to us for assistance. They didn't update their NMLS. And so the regulators were emailing them and they weren't checking that email address and had updated to a different email address. So all those notifications were getting missed. It ended up costing them an entire license.
And that goes back to your very first question when we started this about the starting of your NMLS. If you put just a random secretary or you put whoever made the account for you and you never change those email addresses, they're always going to go to your old employer. Or a lot of our clients like to do info at or licensing at, where it's a big old community email inbox. If someone marks it red and you miss it, that could be a huge fine that you're mentioning. So again, we always recommend it be an owner email. It is to their prerogative who they put there, but that's a prime example of it should be an owner who has a stake.
It should be an account someone somewhere is looking at.
Yeah.
Those are real notices, and they really do mean a lot.
Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit and talking more on the other aspect that you kind of specialize in is these advanced change notices. What is an advanced change notice, and what do brokers need to know and understand about that, and when do they need to file those?
Yeah, I like to steer away from using that terminology, advanced change notices. I like to use the word amendment because a lot of changes you can make to your company doesn't necessarily mean you need to have an advanced change. So the definition of an advanced change notice is exactly what it sounds like. You're giving the states an advanced notice of whatever change you're making. And versus an amendment just means I'm changing something. So a lot of states don't even have a required advanced change notice, and shortened for that is ACN. So if a state doesn't have an ACN, we wouldn't use that terminology. But so for amendments of your company, that literally is such a huge umbrella. It could be, like I said, a comma, or you're changing a registered agent, an owner, whatever the case may be. You have to update it through the NMLS, which requires what is called the advanced change notice. So if a state does require one, you have to put whatever that advanced notice is. So address changes are the best example. California being 10 days, regardless if you're in that space or not. What that 10 days means is California is requiring you to give them at least 10 days notice before you move into that space. It's not, hey, I'm in this space already, here's 10 days to review it. And that's a lot of a misconception our clients have is, well, I don't have time to push my lease back. I'm moving regardless. So that's a misconception of I have to wait. For example, Maryland has a 60-day. They're very common for 60 60 is their favorite number. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to sit there for 60 days and wait. So that's the judgment of, please give us 60 days to review your amendment. And that's the communication you have with the regulator, because you could, if you keep communication, you can push that 60 days up.
So if I'm a broker, I've been working in location A and I'm moving to location B using the state of Massachusetts as my example. Maryland, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am, giving them 60 days advanced notice of my address change.
Yes.
They could approve it within, say, 45 days or 10 days even.
Yes.
But the state wants 60 days.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's more of a courtesy, in following their statutes. And then once you get written approval, whether that's through the NMLS or via email from your state regulator who is assigned to it, once you get that approval, you can move up that date with respect to your other approved state licenses. If there's another state out there that has a 60-day requirement, you of course want to respect them. But just giving the highest, you want to go with the respect of the highest date, which is 60 days would be the example.
What is this longest ACN possible?
So ownership, as you can see, like ownership changes is probably the most complex change you can make in your company, other than a legal name change, just because they want to know who owns the company. So if you're changing that completely, it is, the highest I've seen is 120 days, and that is with Rhode Island and New Jersey. So I think there's a third state, don't quote me on it. New Hampshire may be a little higher up there. They may be 90 days, but 120 is the highest I have seen. And that is when you're changing percentages over 10%. So if you're adding or even removing and someone's gaining that 10%, the 10% is the average threshold of ownership, and 120 is the highest. And then Ohio is just a cool caveat to bring up. If you move anyone above the 5% threshold, it's required, and they're required to be disclosed.
Interesting.
Only state that doesn't go by the 10%.
And then what we've talked about, like some states will fine you, like California will fine you if you don't file it with the proper advance change notice. But are there any other risks?
So other states don't necessarily go by penalties. So a lot of them are nice. Nebraska, California, they just want your money. There are some more serious states out there like Georgia, and let me see, North Carolina, that will do what is called like a regulatory action to you. A lot of them will let it slide once or twice, with the advance notices. But if you do it constantly, which I've seen before, people just constantly change their address and give zero ACN, you will get what's called a regulatory action from them. There's a tab on the NMLS that does track these, and they are public. So you just want to be very careful with that. Some states just throw statutes and you have to sign it saying you'll never do it again. And if you do it again, you're in trouble.
Okay. Yeah, you probably don't want to mess around too much with that. Want to get it done right the first time.
Yeah. Long story short, if you're changing something, just give as big of a heads up as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Can you kind of guide us through how you and the licensing store team assist companies when they are looking to amend something?
Yeah, it's how amendments usually come up is just through a basic audit. So we'll be doing a new license, and whenever we do a new license for a client, we audit your whole profile if you're an existing client. So this is more for a company who has been in the business, not like a startup. So for an existing company, we go through each and every one of your documents. So if they're outdated, or we go over things. So it's always like, is this address still the same? Is your ownership still the same? So us getting to know your profile is where we usually find amendments to come. Is they're like, oh, actually, we're not in that suite anymore. Oh, actually, so and so left. So it's just like a basic conversation having with our clients. So keeping the relationship close, and us almost someone they talk to daily, is how we come about amendments and just basic questions. So we always help them if they ever are thinking of something of moving or adding someone, shoot us the prep documents and we can help you through it. So that's usually how we go about it.
And I'm assuming if you have, one or two states, that's probably easier. But if you're a bigger company or you're trying, even a small company, trying to take on one of those complex amendments being,
Yeah.
ownership change, that might be nice to have somebody just kind of tell you what the next step in the project is.
Yeah. And just asking basic questions to your client is what helps us, because it's what we don't know and what you don't know. So the more questions I ask, the more comes out. So it is just having a better review process and just a relationship between each other. And then that's when we lay out more and more requirements for you, the more you tell us.
Wonderful. One of the other things that you in particular excel at are multi-state licensing projects. You take some of these guys that may not even have a single license and work them upwards in the double digits across the country, nationwide, getting them licensed everywhere. What are the biggest challenges that you are noticing brokers, lenders, servicers face when they start to go to that multi-state level?
It's they have this mentality of I'm gonna get it as we go, which is completely fine. We can get you 50 states that way. It's just not going to be quick. So it kind of goes back to our previous conversation about corporate kits. Like, just Google what a basic business, it doesn't even have to be a mortgage business. Go Google what does a basic business need for an audit. Who cares? For whatever reason, it'll give you a bullet point of basic legal documents. You have those to start. 80 to 90% of the states you're going in are going to, those are the basics they're going to ask for. So if you already have those teed up, it's going to be such a smooth process for you. It'll just be more of just bonds and go obtaining additional requirements. But if you have your legal docs before you even start, and what I mean by that, I mean like operating agreement, you have your operating structure, like who the ownership is, who's going to be the licensed officer, like you already know all that ahead of time. Now you don't need to know the requirements, you just have a person. And a huge hurdle I see that stumps everyone is you're at your old employer. Again, not a problem. People want to start a company and still bring in money at their own employer. That's not going to stop you. It's just, again, be prepared that if it's not going to be you have to have a plan B. So that's probably the most common thing I see is, well, I'm still at my old employer, but I want to get my business up and running. We completely can get you in all 50 states with you still being at your other company, but you have to have more than just you. There are one-man
Yeah.
shops. There are one-man shops, but it's very, very hard to be a one-man shop, especially if you're going for all 50 states.
So like you can be the owner, but you need somebody that's going to be filling in as your like qualified individual for those states that can
Or
meet
just
those requirements.
an operating MLO, like, because it is very common that owners are not necessarily producers, which is completely fine. So I guess the word producers, you want an MLO in addition to yourself to be able to bring you in the money. Because once you get approved, but you're still at your old employer, how are you going to close a loan? You gotta have at least one person to be able to close that loan for you, and then bring on as many people as you want on your own time.
How do you help these companies stay organized as they're moving and going across 3 states or 5 states or 10 states? Like those project sizes can definitely vary.
Yeah, it goes back to organizing. If you're already giving it to me, the checklists are kind of they're all very, very similar. It's only going to be 1 to 3 items that are specific to that state. So how I keep my clients organized is, as long as you have these documents in order, you're going to be you're going to be fine in the other states. And what I mean by that, let me give you an example, is I do it very checklist wise. Even so, the NMLS uses checklist, so do we, via email. And every time a client gives us something, we remove it off that checklist, and they have an outstanding list. Now, where we help them stay organized, if it's needed for one state, or all 3 states, I'm only going to ask for it once. They don't need to keep giving it to me. And then just being overly communicative, like we could use a fidelity bond, for example. It's very misconstrued that a fidelity bond covers you in all states. That's a yes but no answer. It does cover you as a company overall, but for example, Pennsylvania wants a specific amount. So those are where we organize you. Is your fidelity bond covers you, but the limit of $300, 300,000 covers you in Pennsylvania. So that's how we keep you organized within like the state requirements.
Very nice. Any tips that you would give in choosing which state to pursue if they're looking at doing an expansion? You would recommend that what's in demand?
Yeah, so we kind of go with the terminology of hot states. So mortgage companies tend to open up base of word of mouth. So if they're finding someone who has a lot of loans to close in North Carolina, they're obviously going to have what we call priority states or hot states. So we tend to push that a little more to our clients on what's popular to you, and what we can give to you is what's easiest. So, where do you need to be licensed right away? You give me that list. I'll sort that list into telling you what you're going to get approved in quicker, based off of my experience. So, we always use Colorado as an example. So if you came to us with a 3-state list, Colorado, North Carolina, and California, I'm obviously going to put Colorado first, North Carolina second, California last. And that's how we prioritize. But let's say your loans are hot in California. I may put California on top just to get you guys in the queue and then make the quick one. So again, it's just being overly communicative with us, telling us exactly what your dream or your goal is for your company, and then we get you there.
Gotcha. And what is one thing that you always tell brokers before they start a big multi-state expansion project?
Oh gosh, there's several things. Before you start is probably your financials. If you're doing a multi-state project, we're going to organize you to know your highest net worth. And don't go by state by state. That confuses a lot of our clients. Like, oh, Connecticut wants 50,000, but this state wants 75. We always will recommend go to the highest because it's going to cover you for all. Yep. So I would say the number one hiccup is financials. Especially if you're trying to go up a notch from broker to lender, you're going to have to introduce yourself to a CPA.
And minimum net worth means minimum. Always kept
so when
there.
we give a huge table of, again, if you're going in for multi-states, if it's one state, it's easy. But if you're going into like 50, we're going to give you the highest net worth, and you have to hit that at all times. A lot of our clients think, okay, I'm going to get the license, hit the net worth, and then once I get my approval, I'm going to go low. You go low, you have to stay at that number.
I'm going to use my funds to fund other projects in the business.
We see that
but
all
the state, yeah, even when you put it in, yes, when you put it in the application and it dips below the net worth, they could even miss the approval because of that. When you are approved and it dips below.
Well, it goes back to statutes. Some states out there have crazy statutes, like Connecticut. You dip, they'll only allow you to dip one time. You dip a second time, you're in trouble. They can take your license away from you. So I would say starting a big project, make sure your financials are in place. Make sure you have a bank account open for your company, not yourself. Personal assets are not used for a company. Now, can you transfer personal funds to a business bank account? 100%. That's almost what all startups do, is they throw cash in the bank, but it's in the company account. So personal assets are not a thing. You have to have a company account with a company balance sheet.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, that is what accountants and CPAs, some states are going to require the CPA compiled, some are going to require audited, but yeah, start talking to an accountant.
All of that for you. But get that first.
Yes. Any other things that you would tell brokers before starting?
It's gonna be scary at first, meaning it sounds like a lot. But when you start going and start getting your feet wet, meaning you have your own legal documents, your financials are in the company name, it's going to be a smooth process. I always go back to the basics is, what would you want to see out of a business if you were to get a loan for yourself? So if you were loan shopping for you, how would you want that company to look?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for websites, that goes for documents. And you just want to be as compliant as you can.
So, as far as like tools, systems, and strategies go, is there anything that you recommend for companies that are looking to do these multi-state projects to keep themselves?
Yes, this is not in any way a advertisement, or I don't support these, but QuickBooks is heavenly. I don't work for them or anything. I'm just saying,
Sponsor us.
not
We are
every
not
new
sponsored.
every new broker, it's just such a breath of fresh air. You don't have to deal with, so all the states deal with what's called GAAP standard, and it's a general, I always mess it up, general accounting. Oh, what is the second A? Accounting something principles. Can't think of it off the top of my head. And all states go by it. And it's a certain format that your financials have to look at it. And QuickBooks is already formatted that way. So I always tell a client, go open your company business account and go download QuickBooks. It's the
Mm-hmm.
best thing you can possibly have. Um, that's a huge tool. And then having an LOS system ready, like I wouldn't say necessarily ready, but maybe chosen. That is huge too. Just so when you do get your first approval with us, you're not trying to scramble up what you need to be able to get going. So those tools and then resources, we help you a lot if you're with us with bonding and education, but it's really easy for a broker just to have the basic providers for you. So, have a standard education provider you like, because every year you have education to do, and bonds as well. So those are the major resources I think are very helpful.
That actually kind of leads me into my next question. What does Licensing Store's monthly licensing management program, or MLMP, cover that most brokers tend to overlook?
Oh my goodness. Well, that our program covers a whole lot. I'd say the major thing would be the reports that are outside of the NMLS. If you get all your if you're the individual of the company that gets all the emails from the NMLS, you know what reports are due there. What you don't know is the Secretary of State doesn't email you. They don't call you. They're very old fashioned too, maybe even snail mail. So there's several reports out there. Secretary of State annual, etc. that program covers. We watch all the deadlines for you. So especially if you're a multi-state company, and that's 50 different deadlines, you don't have to worry about that. We cover all those deadlines for you. And then as well as with all the amendment conversations we had, those are covered. So if you change your address 20 million times, that's covered in your MLMP program. So any amendments there, and then it kind of leans back to renewals. So that's the huge part of what that program covers is every year you have to renew your company licenses, but all three levels, company, branch, and MLO. And then the MLO level's even more intensive, meaning you have to have your education done and for each state, and maybe even have document updates. So with all that said, that program covers everything. We monitor all the deadlines for you. We enroll you in all the education. We definitely, what it is different from other programs is it has a very what's called like an a la carte vibe. And what that means is if you want to take on something yourself, like I can enroll myself in education, you take on that. It's a very, again, communicative relationship. So if you're a part of the monthly program, but you want us to do some of this and you want to do some of it, it's an a la carte service, and we help you where you need to be helped, and we help you financially too. It's like, oh well, if you need certain things and you want to handle it internally on the NMLS, again, it's just pure communication with us. But I would say what makes it top tier from other programs is the monitoring is not on you. It's with us.
Yeah, that NMLS monitoring, having someone else's eyes on the account so that you can focus on other things is like massive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Can you share an example where good licensing organization and management helped a client avoid a major issue?
Oh gosh. I mean, we have aspects when you're in the pending status and approved status. Pending status meaning when you have an application out there, You may just think you submitted it and you're good. So some states don't always communicate through the NMLS. So Tennessee is a huge example there, meaning when you submit a license, they don't submit deficiencies. They submit a letter again to the contact employee on the NMLS. So whoever that contact employee doesn't get that letter from Tennessee, you may not get an approval in Tennessee. So that's where if we're your contact employee, or we get that correspondence from the Tennessee regulator, we're able to save your license that way. So that's like more pending licenses and deadlines. But if you're already approved, which our monthly program covers and maintains your approved licenses, there are bond increases. So again, we do your reports for you. So if your loan data goes up in a certain state, your bonds may need to be increased. And if you don't do that, you will get hit with a deficiency and your license will be in jeopardy. But we do all that for you. So you can avoid that. We've also, registered agent changes, or if anything changes on your Secretary of State part, but nothing was updated on the licensing end part, that can affect your license as well. And if it's just sitting there, we do it for you. The DRE is a huge one too. If your broker,
what's the DRE?
Oh, sorry, acronyms. Department of Real Estate.
In this, what state?
California. Sorry.
Okay. Yep.
All the states have their own Department of Real Estate, but California is probably the biggest department and what is regulated on the NMLS. And they are the biggest ones that they'll hit you with a deficiency, but never talk to the company. And that is because they will only speak to the broker of record. So there is just a lot of caveats to, just because you're approved does not mean you just throw away that state and you're like, can just do business. You have to constantly be reviewing that state.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And regulations and things can always change. So it's always good to keep somebody in the loop of what's happening.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Last question for you. What is one grown-up thing or one grown-up habit that you wish every broker, lender, and whomever that has an NMLS account adopted for managing their licenses?
Oh, girl. To be upfront. I think that's the best thing you could ever do to the state regulators or to your licenses. You may think holding back or just waiting till you have it straightened away will look better. It actually doesn't. The state regulators are humans as well. They understand the real world. So I guess like the grown-up thing is just, I wouldn't say fall on the sword, but let them know you are, I wouldn't say struggling, or you're working on it, and you're working with them. I think that's the biggest misconception, is just like, no, like we'll get it when we have it, or we'll submit it when we can. And
I don't want to talk to them until I have all my ducks in a row.
Right. Or how should the letter of explanation read? Well, it should read as transparent as you can be. So, and I think that's the biggest win I've seen, is the more you tell these states, the more forgiving they are. And they are also grown up, meaning if you remember when you were a kid and you try to sly away from your parents, they know you're slying away. They know you're hiding
They've
something.
Seen it all.
The regulators are just like parents, meaning they can read through the BS right away. And you're not the only applicant. They're probably on their millionth license application on that day. So just trying to give the runaround or the wool over the eyes until you have the net worth, or whatever example we want to give, it ain't going to work as long as these regulators have been in the business. So yeah. I would always just say as transparent as you can be will give you the win.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today and taking the time to talk to us about the company's NMLS and the things that you've seen in your experience. How can someone get in touch with you, get in touch with your team, so that they can get, your strategies and your brain power?
We have several platforms. Our licensingstore.com. We have an Instagram page. We have a LinkedIn page. Our licensing store website has our contact us tab, so you can get any of our resources there. And we have virtual business cards, I guess you can kind of say, we can provide after the call, and to provide to clients that do reach out.
Oh, fantastic. Any other messages that you want to send us out with?
I mean, if you're starting up, broker level, don't be scared to do it. It sounds very scary, but it is very doable, and we're here to help. Even if it's just one state and you're starting it out, you can do it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Karah. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode and that conversation with Karah Feeley. So, if you're wondering what to do next, hit subscribe so you don't miss an upcoming episode. Head on over to licensingstore.com if you want help with getting licensed, staying compliant, or growing without the chaos. Share this with a friend and follow along because every episode will get you one step closer to being approved AF. Thanks for listening.